Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Google Partners Hangouts on Air. So we're going to dive into the shopping exam and get you guys prepared and ramped up for success. And just as a reminder, this is a live Q&A session, so feel free to submit those questions and I'll certainly get to them at the end. We've got a lot to cover here, so let's get in and get you guys ramped up on shopping. So here are the things that we're going to go over today. We're going to start with just more generally, what is Google Shopping? What are Google Shopping ads? And then we're going to dive into Merchant Center, which some of you guys may know already, but we'll certainly refresh you on this. And then lastly, we're going to dive into creating shopping campaigns within AdWords. All right, so let's get started with an easy one here. What's Google Shopping and what are Google Shopping ads? Well, at a really simple level, Google Shopping allows users to search for products online shopping sites. So if I'm looking for red shoes, for example, I can type it into the Google search bar and I'll be presented with a variety of shoes. So the idea is that we're matching products available for sale online if we think it's going to be useful to that user who's looking for them. And Google Shopping ads can serve all over the internet. They can serve on Google Search, obviously, like we see in this image here. They can serve on the display network on some of our partner sites. They can even show on YouTube. It's pretty vast. And the way that Google Shopping works, and we'll get into all of this later, so don't worry, is that it's linked up to your Merchant Center account and pulls from information known as your data feed. So not keywords. So it's a little bit different than our standard search campaigns, but again, we'll get into this. So you need a Google Merchant Center account, and on a really high level, Google Shopping connects people to products, people who are selling products and those who are interested in them. All right, so retailers can use shopping campaigns for a variety of things. To promote online and local inventory, to sell new, used, or even custom goods. That's one great thing about shopping. It's not just restricted to new goods. So you could sell antiques, for example, and be absolutely good to go there, assuming you have your feed set up correctly, but we'll get into that. It's also great for boosting traffic to your website or local store if you're a merchant, and also getting better, more qualified traffic. So if you think about it, you're really matching your products that you're serving to people who are specifically searching and looking for those things. So these are going to be really qualified segments of traffic. Another benefit is that through Google Shopping campaigns, we really provide an easy retail-centric campaign management model. So it's actually quite easy, assuming you do all the setup correctly. And lastly, equally important is with Google Shopping, you also have access to powerful reporting and comparative data. So as you're going about this process and setting up your campaigns, you can really measure the effectiveness, which matters if you're a business owner, right? Here you can see on the screen just a little visual of ad groups within a shopping campaign, but we'll get more into this in a bit. All right, so where can shopping ads appear? As I mentioned, they can appear on search, they can appear on Google partner sites and the display network, on YouTube, but here's just an example of what it might look like if I were looking for flowers and type this into Google, buy flowers. It's pretty clear the shopping ads versus organic listings. So one telltale sign that you're looking at a shopping ad is that it has to have an image. We require our merchants to have images because think about it, if you're going to buy something, you want to know what that looks like. It makes for a much better customer experience. So you can tell if there's an image there, if it's what you're looking for, if there's a price. So this is nicely illustrated in this visual here. So if you're ever on the internet wondering, like, is that shopping? I'm not sure. Another good indicator is that little sponsored signal in the upper right-hand corner. And also, too, it's worth noting that shopping ads can appear at the same time as text ads. And a big thing is, as with any text ads or display network ads, you're actually only paying when somebody clicks on the ad. So it's not a model where you're paying for impressions, purely clicks. So think of it just like a search or a standard display campaign. All right, so we've covered shopping on a super high level here, what it is, what it looks like, what it does. But now I want to get into some really important pieces that make all of this happen. And a big one is Merchant Center. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Merchant Center and you're taking the shopping exam, I would highly recommend ramping up on it ASAP. Head to google.com/merchant center. But essentially, this is the hub where retailers set up an account for their business. It's going to contain all of your business data, like your URL, who you are, all of that, but also what's known as your data feed. So that data feed is going to communicate with AdWords and make the shopping campaigns possible. So you can't have a shopping campaign without a Merchant Center account. So it starts here before you can even consider setting one up on the AdWords end. So let's say that you're absolutely starting out. Let's say I own this flower shop. I want to set up a Google Shopping campaign. I go to Merchant Center. I start setting up an account. After I set it up, what happens next, we need to make sure that I'm verified, is that Google is going to make sure that all of your information, that contact information, for example, is accurate, going to make sure that you have a secure checkout process, that it's pretty clear what your refund policy is, and that the billing terms and conditions are pretty clearly stated, and that there's a pretty clear online checkout process. So pretty involved vetting process. We just want to make sure that our merchants are going to provide a good customer experience ultimately for our advertisers and people who are looking to shop online. All right, so after you're vetted and we've confirmed that you're a legitimate retailer and you've gotten the green light in Merchant Center, the next big step, and sometimes the hardest step, is actually creating a product feed. So there's a couple ways to do this, but there's some pretty hard and fast rules you do need to follow. And just on a really high level, the product feed will contain information such as your target country, the product names, product groups, prices, and other information that I'll get into in a little bit. But an example of some file extensions you can use, in other words, what's going to house this feed, are listed on this slide, but that can mean a TXT file, an XML file, a GZ file, et cetera, et cetera. And don't worry about remembering all of this. This is all online if you want to refresh, but just really important that you guys understand the formats that we have available. A, just as you're managing accounts, and B, as you're ramping up for this exam. Okay, so as important of the structure, making sure you have the right file type and vetted Merchant Center account, what's incredibly important, you guys, is what you have in your feed. So we have some pretty hard and fast requirements for the feeds, and these are known as attributes. So under general attributes on this slide, you can see the list on the left-hand column that you're absolutely going to need in most instances. This includes like an item ID, title, description, a Google product category, product type, image length, because remember, like I said, you absolutely need an image. Good quality image is the best, as well as condition. And again, all of this is housed online if you want to get into any more nitty-gritty detail. But there are a lot of attributes, and one really important thing that you guys need to know is that requirements actually do vary by country. So depending on what country you're looking to advertise in, please take the time to review these policies and these requirements and become familiar with them, because there are a lot, and we want to make sure that you don't run into any issues, because unfortunately, accounts can become suspended and items can become disapproved if you are missing any of these required attributes. So always a good idea to read our resources to make sure that nothing is missing. So in addition to those general attributes that you saw in the last slide, there's two more sets of attributes that are very important. The first one is prices and availability. I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? We want to know how much these products are going to cost, right? So, but the great thing about these attributes is in addition to showing people price, which is important, you can also specify if there is a sale, how long that sale is lasting, and just specify if there's any sort of nuance between your products, which I imagine there likely is. The other one that you also need to pay attention to is what's known as a unique product identifier. And again, these are all attributes in your feed, but unique product identifiers are very important, and we've actually been really tightening down on them because we want to have as much information as possible about these products at hand. So make sure that you're including things in your feed like brand, the GTIN, that's very important, the MPN, and if for some reason you have like a custom antique good and there is no brand or GTIN, we do have an attribute that says identifier exists. And in those kind of one-off extenuating instances, you would actually set this to false. But again, we have more information and examples on this online if this is a particular situation that relates to what it is you're selling. This does happen too, by the way, so not to worry. All right, so we can even get even more specific in our data feed if you'd like with what's known as detailed product attributes and item groups, which allow you to designate things like size, color, gender, age group, all of that good stuff. Also too, if you're selling adult-oriented items, please make sure to use the adult attribute in the Merchant Center settings. But you can see here in the visual, just a list of some detailed product attributes if they're going to be relevant to you. Okay, so yeah, sales and price are really important. We get it. A lot of our merchants have sales, and besides, who doesn't love a good sale anyways? But if you are having a sale, we really want to make sure that you're specifying that correctly in your feed, because if there's any kind of price discrepancy between what's on your feed and what's on your site, you could potentially have your account suspended, and we really don't want that. So for that reason, we have set up these specific sale attributes for your feed, so you can specify them so we don't have any issues. So as you can see in this table here, if you're selling your cat sweaters normally for $33.99 and you're having that summer sale, you would specify that actually, they're $24.49 on your site. And in that sale price effective date, you could list the range of that sale. So at any point when Google's crawling your site, there's no mismatch and there's no problem, and you can have a successful sale. So if you're going to do a sale, which we highly recommend you do, because who doesn't love it, just do it right and have no discrepancies. And another important thing too is re-upload your feed. It will refresh this data. So if I'm having a sale, it's launching tomorrow, I need to re-upload my feed so that data is current and up to date in our system. Cool. So we've kind of gone into some concepts here, Merchant Center. Let's dive into the actual fun part, which is creating a shopping campaign in AdWords. Okay, so what I would recommend you guys do first and foremost is get that Merchant Center up and running and have the business verified, get that feed going. And the next part is you want to make sure that you link up your AdWords account and your Merchant Center account so they can communicate with each other, right? Because they're contingent on one another. So like I said, after you've done your due diligence, your URL is verified, your business is valid, it's all looking good. You can see in the account here, there's a section where you link up your AdWords account. It's a pretty simple process, but it will allow you to do the next step in the AdWords side of things, which is actually creating that shopping campaign. So I would say, you guys, order of operations really does matter here. So do this. So if you go into AdWords, it's not a surprise if you don't see your Merchant Center magically linked up already. Okay, so let's say you have linked up your Merchant Center. It's awesome. You've done all the steps we're talking about. We're in our campaigns tab. Let's go ahead and make that shopping campaign. Like any different campaign type, you're going to want to specify shopping in that little box that says type. It has a cool little logo with some shopping tags. And then the next step, I bet you guessed it, is Merchant Center. So you're going to specify that Merchant Center account just so that link is complete and those two can absolutely communicate with one another. And then, really important, because I mentioned this before and I'm going to mention it again, but different policies vary by country. So you're going to want to select your country of sale for the specific campaign. But again, please read into how the policies and requirements vary by country if that's going to be relevant to you. It's really important that your feed matches the requirement for this country as well as your landing page does. Great. So there's a couple of ways that you can go about managing a shopping campaign, because it is going to be different than your search and your display campaigns, obviously. So you're dealing with products and you don't have things like keywords, though you do have ad groups. So what we recommend you do actually, and we find this to be really effective for a lot of people, is to organize and manage your shopping campaign by product groups. So you can actually use any of the 6 attributes on the screen right now from your data feed to create product groups. So for example, and again, this can vary by your business, but you could create a product group by the attribute product type. And the example here, that could be road bikes. So if I want to just, put all of my road bikes together and my tricycles together and my unicycles together, I could do that by product type if I want to bid differently on those different product types. The second we can group by product type is category. So if you don't have your own taxonomy but want to bid by a category, you can do that. The example we have here is road bikes, men's. So again, pretty specific, male road bikes. You can also group by brands. Some people like to bid more competitively on other brands, some brands versus others. That can be a great option. Again, this all depends on the business. So it's not as if, oh, you should absolutely be organizing by brand. If that's how you want to do it, great. That's why we have a lot of different options available. You can also group your product groups by ID if that's something you're interested in. Also condition, if you want to group, bid more, for example, on your new items versus your old items, that's an option as well. And lastly, we have the option for you to add custom labels, because we realize that maybe there are other situations that warrant different product groups for you. So a good example of this is best sellers, for example. So you can apply custom labels in your data feed, mind you. And that's basically telling our system that, it's a way of organizing them. So then later you can perhaps do different things with them, like bid more competitively. So again, here, these are just some options, ways you can organize. It's not required, purely optional, but can be a good best practice that we do recommend. So back to custom labels, we see this a lot. Again, it's optional only if this feels like a good fit for your business and just as you're going about organizing and managing these accounts. But they can be ideal for grouping key performance indicators, those KPIs like conversion rate, seasonality, and more. So you can apply custom labels for your fall line of cat sweaters or your summer collection. Depends on what you want to do with it, but we do present this option for that very reason. You can see an example we have here with custom labels for season, promotion, selling rate, margin, holiday. You name it, you can probably create a custom label for it. Awesome. So let's go back to the campaign creation phase. There's a couple preferences that are worth paying attention to. So when you set up, we're all linked up to Merchant Center and so on, the next thing you're going to want to specify is your campaign priority. And so this is basically an indicator of how the campaign should participate in auctions. And it's worth noting that campaign priorities are set to low by default, but it can be changed to medium or high. And priorities determine the bid for any product that multiple campaigns share. So Google knows what bid that you want ultimately. So it's a good way of having some control over what to prioritize, in other words. So priority bids, we use priorities to determine bids using to distinguish the highest priority campaign bids, so on and so forth. All right, so we've set our campaign up. Now we want to make sure that we are monitoring it and optimizing it and continuing to set it up for success. Because it's not all over as soon as you've set it up. There is maintenance required, as with any campaign. So a couple ways that you can do this, and we recommend in the account that you monitor your campaigns, is to be looking at the data. That's a great place to start. So look at your product groups tab, see how your different product groups are performing. Also check out the dimensions tab. The dimensions tab is great in any campaign, but it's a great way of seeing where your users are coming from, for example, and to find some more interesting, perhaps maybe more demographic information. Also, the auction insights report. This is really important for shopping because it can help you see how you're stacking up to the competition. And just in terms of best practices for shopping campaigns, we really do recommend two major things. One is bids, which I'll get into in a second here. And the other is data quality. So making sure your feed is, you're not missing any information and your titles and your descriptions are crystal clear. But with regard to bids, there's a couple things you can do to monitor and optimize. On a pretty high level, you can manage your budget. You can increase budget for campaigns, shopping campaigns that are perhaps more profitable, bringing you more conversions. And on that same note, you can also decrease for campaigns that are perhaps, say, less profitable. Another big one with regard to bids is mobile bid adjustments. So you can actually increase those bids if you see for mobile, for example, if mobile seems to be pretty fruitful for you, or decrease it accordingly. Though I will say that mobile search is actually surpassing desktop search. So I would think hard about decreasing mobile. The next is location bid adjustments. If you really want to capitalize on a certain area and optimize for a certain city or small zip code, you can do a location bid adjustment. If you're getting a ton of conversions in a small town in Iowa, add a location bid adjustment of 15 or 20% to really help you bring in more. So these bid adjustments are a great way to leverage findings, when you're seeing that things are working, kind of harness that moving forward. So continuing to the idea of bringing you more success down the line. Another great option to consider is ad schedule bid adjustments. So you can add a bid adjustment if you want your ads to serve more on certain days of the week, times, that kind of thing, and likewise not serve at certain dates or time. And the last one, because this is really important, sometimes people can get confused because shopping campaigns do not have keywords. So we're going to match those products to our users based on information in your data feed, like that title and description. However, we do have the option for you to use negative keywords. So we strongly recommend that you use them if you're not already using them, because negative keywords help us bring the most relevant traffic by filtering out irrelevant traffic per se. So certainly make sure that you're taking advantage of all of these different bidding options that we have as they are relevant to you, and use negative keywords to bring in the most relevant traffic. Great. So as I mentioned before, just in the spirit of monitoring and optimizing your shopping campaign, bids are really important. So increasing and decreasing, really tweaking where you see things are working and where they're not working. The second is, and this can be really helpful to people, is to segment your product group. So this is just a way for you to stay organized. So how, if I'm selling bikes online, I know how my tricycles are doing versus my unicycles. So that can be really helpful, and you can do more targeted bids based on these product groups. And lastly, applying custom labels. If you have thousands of products, which a lot of people do, it's just really good to know what is what. And it can help your life, when you're in the AdWords interface trying to analyze your data, have a sense of what is what. So highly recommend just staying organized, and a great way to do that is through labels and segmenting into product groups. But again, it's all optional, so it's not required. Another great tool that's worth using that I would highly recommend to you guys, or even just to be aware of, is the bid simulator. It's a great way. It's a tool that collects and analyzes data from ad auctions on Google's from the past 7 days, and helps kind of consider information such as quality of ads, competitors' bids, data, like product quality, to give you a sense of what those bids might ultimately look like. So it's a great way to forecast, get a sense of the market, and see how you're kind of stacking up. Because ultimately, as you guys probably all know, the market can fluctuate, and it's really important to make sure that you are bidding competitively, as the competition and what they're bidding can change on a dime. So important to stay up to date on these trends, and this is a great tool to do that if you haven't explored it already. Okay, so let's go back to some more best practices. So, on a pretty obvious level, you definitely want to create a campaign promoting your best-selling products and their subsets. So have great products that people want to buy. If you are selling products that people aren't interested in, like cobwebs, I mean, maybe on Halloween, but people might not want to buy them. So having great products and a really well-structured data feed is really, really important. And like I mentioned before, making sure that you prioritize your best-selling seasonal or promotional, like, seasonal specials, that kind of thing. You can do that with, remember, those custom labels or product groups. So, staying organized, knowing what's working, and optimizing for those products accordingly. Also, make sure that you have good call to action and promotional text. And this is really important. This plays into data quality. So make sure your descriptions are pretty clear, and it's not only obvious what you're selling, but what the benefit it is and what that call to action should be for the user. Also, too, just a best practice, if you want to increase conversions, we recommend bidding on product groups with lower cost per conversion, and with lower cost per conversion and less with higher cost per conversion. So that goes back to just being in the data and tweaking accordingly. And lastly, include, again, with data quality, include relevant attributes such as, title, brand, size, color, to optimize the products of your title. I say with shopping, and I've worked on a ton of shopping accounts, the more the merrier. The more information you can provide, the better. And the less apt you'll be to run into problems with missing any attributes. So the more the merrier is what I say. All right, so we've covered a lot, and I know that shopping can be pretty comprehensive. So I want to just give you guys a brief breakdown of what this exam is going to look like, and also point you to some resources to really help you guys stay ahead of the curve and be prepared for when you go into actually taking this exam. So first and foremost, the exam's 120 minutes, so about 2 hours. There's 100 questions. You're going to need 80% to pass, and it's good for 12 months. And I mentioned a lot of content here today, but I strongly encourage you guys to check out our Help Center. We go into this in a lot more depth. In fact, we have comprehensive documents with our product feed specification, going into each of these attributes in a very nitty-gritty way, so there are no surprises. So I work at Google. I use our Help Center all the time. It's there for a reason. There's even great videos for you to use, so take advantage of that. Also, too, we have an excellent shopping study guide that if you haven't used, we strongly recommend that you look through before the exam. And other than that, just practice. And if you're still confused and you're still lost and you have questions, you can call our Help Center line, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you and answer some questions as well. And just as a reminder, too, to our partners here, in order to become certified, you must pass the fundamentals exam as well as one other exam. So this can be, shopping, like this exam, video, display, etc. So we've covered a lot of content here, and now I want to answer your questions to make sure there are no gaps in knowledge here. So, I've got a good one. This is one of my favorite questions, and I want to make sure you guys come out of this knowing it's crystal clear. But how do we optimize the shopping campaign? Well, 2 things, you guys. bids, and I went into this before, all the different ways you can tweak those bids with mobile bid adjustments, location bid adjustments, ad group bid adjustments, and data quality. So the more the merrier. So make sure you have really rich data quality in that feed, that there's no gaps, there's nothing missing, and use negative keywords. Other than that, there isn't much more you can do. So shopping's pretty unique in that sense. And with our other campaign types, there can be more options to get more, have more control. But with shopping, it's bids and data quality. So just remember that. All right, so for someone who's just starting out, in what order should I pursue all of these steps? That's a great question. As I mentioned, order of operations does matter. Then this is in the really beginning stages. So I would say, first things first, create a Merchant Center account, get your business vetted, get your URL verified, make sure everything's good to go there. And then make sure that you have a kind of inventory and you are a merchant who's even a fit for a feed. So, then focus on creating a feed and make sure that that is something you're going to be able to provide without any gaps. And after you've done those two steps, then go over to AdWords and start creating that campaign. So great question. Order is important. I wouldn't do it the other way around. Otherwise, you'd run into some issues. I got a question about shipping. That's a really important thing here. We want to specify shipping for our items because that's going to be an important piece for our users to know. One important thing to know about shipping is it can be done one of two ways. One, on the account level, so you can specify shipping for all of your products, or you can do it on the item level. And this is one really important thing to note. If you have an item level attribute for something like shipping or tax, for example, it's actually going to override what is on the account level. So really important to know we have that in place because we realize that there can be some nuance, and sometimes a shipping one size fits all for an account isn't really the best option. So that's why we give you the option to do specific overrides on the individual level. All right. So how long is the exam period open? So for the Specialist Challenge, it's until the 23rd. So we've got a little bit of time here. And to get that specialist certificate. But otherwise, you can take it anytime. But right now, we're in that Specialist Challenge. So we do recommend that you take that before the 23rd. All right. Well, that about covers it here, you guys. Please make sure that you read through those product feed specifications to take into account the different scenarios that your particular merchant or your agency's clients merchant might have if they're selling, colorful fabric onesies or, tri-colored unicycles, you name it. We have a special setup that they can use. Make sure you use those resources, and we're always available here if you need us as well. Well, that concludes it. Best of luck to you guys, and have a wonderful rest of your day.